Welcome to Life Coaching on the Move. I'm your host, Dawn Fiske. Welcome along. It's brilliant that you're here today. Thank you so much. If you're new, feel free to go to the other previous 80 odd episodes and find any that might be of use to you on a whole array of different subjects. But if you are new, I recommend you start at the beginning rather than go back in time. It will just make more sense at the beginning of what I cover there. If you're a regular listener, then thank you. I am so grateful that you keep coming back. Today's podcast is all about choice, because we all have choice at any point in time. So it's about choice, and I think I might just go straight into it actually. Just apologies for the little bit of noise in the background. That's a fan heater keeping me warm. It's a little bit chilly in here. And to let you know that the website is up and available with all sorts of things, the blog, some online courses, some virtual courses, etc. and a way of contacting me if you want to contact me. So www.milestone-coaching.co.uk. And if today's episode has helped you, or any previous episodes, please would you mind sharing it on your social media? Spread the word so that it can help your friends who may well be having a tough time at the moment. Thank you so much. Let's get into the subject of choice. Right, this is actually my third attempt at today's episode. The first one had lots of deliveries arriving and dogs barking, so I've cancelled that. The second one, the dogs had a massive play, very noisy. So I've got rid of them now, and the only noise on this one, hopefully, is going to be the fan heater that's on my feet trying to keep me warm. So apologies for that. Today is all about choice, so I chose to scrap the last two, ever the professional, and now I'm going to attempt my third. Now today's is about choice because we do always have a choice. We have a choice about what we do, we have a choice about how we feel, and we have certainly a choice about what we think. And those things are in our control. And what prompted me to do this was because I've been listening to a really inspiring episode of Dr. Chatterjee, which I've mentioned previously is a great podcast series if you want to listen to something else. I would really urge you, in fact, if you have to choose between this and mine and Dr. Chatterjee's, I would say go and choose Dr. Chatterjee's, because he has got a phenomenal guest on the New Year's Day episode of his Feel Better, Live More series. He's got a guest, Dr. Edith Eger, Eger, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. And the podcast episode is called You Always Have a Choice. Feel Better, Live More. Google that and you'll find her. She is a 93-year-old lovely lady, very inspiring, very gentle, got lots and lots of words of wisdom. She is a therapist or a counsellor, stroke hypnotherapist or psychotherapist, I think, a doctor of psychology, that sort of field. So she imparts loads of experience and knowledge from her work. She's 93 and is an Auschwitz survivor. She was in Auschwitz at the age of 16, and she gives some real insight into the strength of the human spirit. And how she coped with that, and how she coped with life thereafter. And so it's the New Year's Day edition of his series. It's definitely worth a listen to. She also has a great book out, apparently, called The Gift, which Dr. Chatterjee said to her was just an inspirational book that he feels everybody should read. And he says it's a book that keeps giving, because even when you finish reading it and you keep dipping in and out of it, no matter which page you go to, there's something that resonates differently with you on that day than it might have on a different day, depending on what you're going through and what you're feeling. So the book just keeps giving. So I may well add that to my reading list next, actually, or audio book for my dog walks. So she says we always have a choice, which we do. And she has so many great phrases and snippets in this interview, but one that she says that really, really resonated with me was that she came to realize in or after Auschwitz that actually the toughest, worst prison wasn't actually Auschwitz, or isn't in life, that in fact the worst prison of all that any one of us can encounter can be our mind. And I've said this before, that our mind, our mind is hugely important in everything that we do or don't do, depending on the mindset that we're in, depending on what we're saying in our head, depending on what we're telling ourselves. And I think she's right. The worst, toughest prison potentially could well be our own minds. And I've worked with so many clients that are trapped in their own negative thinking, are a victim of their own disempowering, unhelpful, critical thinking. This voice in their head just consistently beats them up, criticizes them, chips away at their own confidence, drags them down. And why do we do that? What is that serving any one of us? What does that give us? I've been working with clients in the last week where this has come up. And, the theme of a regular theme that keeps coming up is clients comparing themselves to others. Others are brilliant, prettier, faster, cleverer, more able, more successful, stronger, just better people in their minds than when they look at themselves. As they see it, what does that do for anybody? And also the fear, another one that I regularly hear is the fear of what others think of us, trying to live up to what we think are their expectations, live up to an image that we think others have of us. And actually I was listening recently to something that really got me thinking. It was saying, how much of our life is spent performing? How much are we performing in our life compared to how much are we living our life? Now that's quite a profound thought as well, because so many of us, many of us perform at some time or another. We put a bit of a mask on and we behave in such a way in a way that we believe we should or ought or is expected of us in that situation. But some more than others. For some people, life is largely a performance. Social media, to a certain extent, has created this kind of monster in a way, because so much of what we put out there is filtered and polished and veneered and is the better image that we want people to see, where we're looking nice, the makeup's good, the hair's good, the clothes are good, or the place, the venue, it all looks very positive, very happy, very sought after and desirable. We're living a happy, completely content life. We rarely put up that we're having a bad day, or that we've got a breakout of spots, or our hair looks terrible and needs a good old treatment at the hairdressers or anything. We don't generally put those things up, or that we're feeling lots of self-doubt. We rarely show our vulnerability or our grumpiness or our slobbishness on a Sunday or anything like that. We give out what we want them to see. And to a certain extent, the podcast here that I do each week, to a certain extent, I guess some might say, or I might say, is a bit of a performance. I want to come across as upbeat, positive, inspiring, etc. That's the purpose of the podcast. It wouldn't serve its purpose if I came on here really miserable or grumpy or negative or criticizing myself or mean, and judgmental about clients or anything, or political or whatever. It just wouldn't serve its purpose, because the purpose of this podcast is to help and inspire others, and it wouldn't achieve that goal. So, of course, There are times, however, that I do feel vulnerable or down or grumpy or self-doubting or cross with the children or frustrated with something or we all have that. Someone shouts at us in a shop or in a wood, as I shared with you once, or somebody cuts you up, or the traffic's bad, or you're just having a bad day, a bad time. That can come across, but I can't let that on the podcast. Equally, I can't with one-to-one clients or people I'm working with. I can't bring my stuff into that. I have to distance myself from my own stuff and be there for them, which is great. And it's a tonic for me, actually. It actually helps a lot. But that's not what it's about. I have to 100% give to that client. It's their time. It's about them. It's their stuff. But there are times where that has been really, really hard. I do remember one time, I think the hardest one ever that I ever had, we had a absolutely shocking night. The worst night. A friend was suddenly a few doors up, taken very ill. We were called upon at 10:30 at night and went up there to them to help. The ambulance arrived. It was horrible scenes, terrible, tragic scenes, and our friend didn't make it. And so we were then with his spouse and family and children and looking after them and etc., etc. And it was a terrible night. It was a horrendous night. And but I had a corporate client that was driving down from Manchester, I think, down to Berkshire, where I was due to work at the head office of a company, and I couldn't get hold of that person to stop them driving down, and I had to be there to do a session with that person. I'd had no sleep at all, and had done lots of crying and very, very heartbreaking night, a very traumatic night. But for that hour, I had to show up and put all of that aside for one solid hour to be there completely for that client. So, and you're taught this, you're trained, and that's part of your learning when you are, go through the coaching to become a coach. And I'm sure that is the same in so many professions. We have to put a private life behind us at times and just perform on Zoom or perform on stage, or where, doctors can't bring their stuff to work, and medics and teachers, and, that's many of us have to do that many times. We may have had a big issue at home with the children, or a worry or concern or problems, a Barney with our spouse or whatever, and we have to park it. Some people are better at that than others. I wasn't planning to go down that route. How on earth did we get down there? But as the lovely lady, Dr. Edith Eger, I think, says, we always have a choice. Now, she quickly learned survival methods in Auschwitz by observing what had terrible consequences, and therefore what she should avoid, behaviours such as you never touch the guards. She learnt that very quickly, never touch the guards or they'll shoot and you wouldn't survive. So she learnt things like that through observation and learning. And she quickly decided in her own mind that she decided and believed and felt that she wasn't the prisoner, that in fact the guards were the prisoners. They themselves were more of a prisoner than she was. And also she was just a mere 16 and in love. She had a little boyfriend back at home and loved him, and that's what kept her going. The thought, the hope, the goal, the dream that one day she would be free and she would be walking along holding his hand again soon. That kept her sane. And she got very quickly to the point where she knew they could do whatever physically to her. She, what would be kind of thing, but they would never take her mind. They would never control her mind. She could go where she wanted in her mind, and she chose to choose lovely thoughts and dreams of her being with her loved one. ultimately, and that's what kept her strong and kept her going. So we can do that. In fact, actually, through COVID, through the restrictions, now lots of us are frustrated, lots of us want life to return to normal, and it's dragging us down, or it's affecting us, and it's difficult, it's got challenges, and it's not easy at all, for some worse than others. But the thought that one day it will get better, one day we'll have our life back and normality, and we'll be sitting around each other's kitchen tables, or in the pub together, or in a restaurant, or at a concert or a theatre, or on a beach, or whatever, that will happen. That will happen without a doubt. We've just got to keep looking forward to that. We don't know when quite it's going to be, but it will happen. Sooner, probably, if we all just knuckle down and do as we should do in order to keep every single person safe. So we can be projecting out to the future, looking forward to the future, holding on to that image, getting excited about that image. We have a choice, and as she did, she says we can choose how we feel. We can choose what we can say in our heads and how that impacts on us. And so we can choose today joy. We can choose to be happy today. We can choose to smile. If you're out in the supermarket picking up essentials, or you're delivering to people, if you're a delivery person, or you've got to go to work, if you're a key worker, or if you're out in the park on having a walk or whatever, we can choose to smile, or we can choose to keep our eyes down and stay inward. We can choose to contact a friend. We never know how that might help. In fact, my husband, one of my husband's friends, has been struggling with marriage breakdown before Christmas, and has had a rotten Christmas by himself, New Year by himself, etc. But men being men, I've been saying, maybe you should contact him and suggest a dog walk. And my husband has been looking at me as if I've just gone mad. A dog walk? Men don't do that. We go to the pub and things, but we can't do that now. Or we go and watch a football match or something. And thought I was insane, and was certain that his friend wouldn't want that and wouldn't respond to that, etc., etc., and had dismissed me several times. And back end of last week, I said, just ask one more time. Because it might be that they're really struggling and lonely and down, and may really appreciate it. Just give them the opportunity to say no. And so, against his better judgment, did suggest it, and was taken up on the offer, and went for a long walk with the dogs. And I think it was genuinely appreciated, really, really appreciated, and actually made my husband feel better as well, because he felt he was able to actually do something and be there for that person and support them and let them know that they were being thought about and supported. But we convince ourselves that it won't be of interest, or it won't be, don't be silly, or they're fine, but they're not always fine. The very least we need to do is at least offer or suggest it, and don't just take the first no as that's it. Do it one more time. Just make sure. Because some people are really, really struggling and having a hard time. Not just with COVID, because unfortunately, although we're all living through a pandemic at the moment, other life events happen. People, are going through some really tough times unrelated to COVID, as well as the pandemic. So just some real, real difficulties that I've been hearing about. Unimaginable. As well as a pandemic. So we do really, really need to choose to be there for our friends in case. So choose today to be joyful. Choose today to be a great mate. Choose today to be happy. And if you can't choose the whole day, then break the day into segments. This happened the other day. I was talking with a client in the morning, and they were saying, no, well, today I've written today off. It's been a bit of a mare. I didn't have a good night's sleep. I'm not feeling it today. And so we talked about, I was saying, why the whole day? Why do we write off a whole day? And just as a given, that's it. That's the day done. It started off bad, so it's therefore ultimately going to be bad for the remainder. What we need to do is break it into chunks. So maybe the morning, but at 12 noon, right, draw a line, it's now the afternoon. Right, I'm going to have a good afternoon. I'm going to have a productive afternoon now. The morning's been a bit of a shocker. For whatever reason, the afternoon's going to be much more focused and much more productive, or much happier, or much, impactful. Or if it's the afternoon's been really slow or flat or negative or upsetting or whatever the word, then the evening, 6 o'clock has come, I'm going to have a relaxed, happy evening. And I'm going to contact some friends on Zoom or WhatsApp or whatever. Or I'm going to read a really good book. In fact, I was listening to a lady this morning, I just caught the end of it, and she was saying that she's converted a little part of her home into a reading area. She's got a nice, comfy, snug chair, a couple of reading lights there. She's put loads of books on the shelves that she has loved in the past and wants to reread, or new ones that she's always wanted to read, and some classics and stuff. And she's getting through about between 3 and 5 a week, I think, absolutely soaking them up. And she said she's absolutely loving it. She's learning things. It's opening thoughts in her mind. It's opening knowledge and curiosity. She's curious about things she hears or sees in a book and thinks, what's that? I've never heard of that. Starts Googling it, and so much joy. It's bringing her so much joy. So, there are still lots of things out there that we can choose to do. So, for example, break the day down into small, little, manageable sections. Don't write the whole day off. Another area that came up as well with somebody was that they had a real passion in life and they'd love to achieve this certain thing in life, but they had done nothing towards it. So they'd written themselves off. They'd written it off. Well, I just don't get around to it. So, I've been at home all over Christmas, all over New Year. I've done nothing towards it, so it's not meant to be. It's never going to happen. And again, because so far there's been not much progress, because they feel they should be concentrating on it all day. Again, we talked about, okay, let's make this manageable. How about an hour a day? Could you manage an hour a day? And they said, yes, I could. Okay, what part of the day would be your best part? When would it be realistic for you? When's it likely to actually happen? How? And things like that. And so we agreed that we would work together again in a fortnight, and that would be 14 hours of success, of progress, of achievement that they wouldn't have achieved if they'd set themselves too high a task, which is, if I don't do it all day, I don't do anything. Therefore, he wasn't doing anything. Now, very different. Same with any of us with fitness or with any goal that we've got like that. Break it into little manageable chunks. Don't think you're going to go and get fit by doing 2 hours a day for the next 6 months and you've not previously done any exercise. That's too big an ask. How about 5 minutes? Or go out for a walk, and in that walk spend 5 separate single minutes walking briskly with a recovery time in between. So for 1 minute walking very briskly, getting the heart going, and then recover. 1 minute briskly, then recover, etc. And before you know it, over a few walks, you will be able to cut the recovery time down to, say, half a minute. And after a few more walks, you'll be able to do 5 solid minutes briskly. You're increasing your fitness, you've got a focus, you've got a goal, and so forth. So often, one of the things that encourages failure is to overpromise ourselves. It's to over-expect. So we need to bring them down into tiny, 5 minutes of yoga, or 5 minutes of stretching, or 5 minutes of deep breathing and a little bit of meditation, or whatever it is that you're trying to introduce into your life, just do it for 5 minutes. That's all we need to do. Or if you're not achieving, just do one of those emails on your to-do list or one of those phone calls. that sort of thing, just manageable little chunks. And that way you're much more likely to achieve it and feel better. There's nothing more motivating than progress. Once we start to see some progress, we get the feeling of motivation. It's not motivation that comes first. It's the doing that comes first. So one phrase that I love is, and a bit of a mantra that we can all say, is I am, I will, I can. I am, I will, I can. And when I hear clients say I am ... I do tune into that, because quite often in coaching, at the beginning, they're very negative. I am, well, I'm a perfectionist, or yeah, but I'm a procrastinator, yeah, but I'm idle, yeah, but I don't like exercise, or whatever. The I am usually is followed by disempowering, unhelpful, unhealthy thoughts that the person believes is true, believes they're fact. Well, they are at the moment while they're saying them, but they don't have to be. There is a choice. As she says, there's always a choice. So we can choose to change those thoughts. We can choose to have 5 minutes of progress doing the opposite. And then before we know it, we're calling ourselves, I'm a runner. Because you've been running now 5 minutes, then 10 minutes, then 15 minutes. Before you know it, you're calling yourself a runner. Got to identify with it. So I am ... What are you? What do you want to be? I will. I see that as what are your goals? What are your hopes? What will you do? What do you want to do? What do you dream of? What do you hope to do? And I can. What are your strengths? List out your strengths. Just now, with a pen and paper, write down 5 strengths. Now, when I do this face-to-face with some clients, they genuinely can't come up with any at first. Genuinely, their mind just blanks down, shuts down. But I know they're there. We've all got strengths. We may not see them. We may not recognize them. One way of doing that, then, if you genuinely can't admit to having any strengths, is to ask yourself, okay, what would my closest loved one say were my strengths? What would they list as my strengths? What would my children or my boss or my colleague say were my strengths? And there will be, whether it's honesty, you're reliable, you're committed, you're kind, you're caring, you're compassionate, you're strong, you're optimistic, you're determined, you've got a good work ethic. You've got a great sense of humour. You're interesting. What are your strengths? There's so many that you could list. But aim for 5, because I've said a manageable size. And then when you've done 5, say to yourself, I will put 2 more down. And then say to yourself, I'll put 1 last one for luck. They're there. They're absolutely there. And if you really can't, then genuinely ask your closest loved ones, what are my strengths? And that may be a lovely, lovely gift that they give you 5 strengths. And that feels good. It feels good when someone says something nice about you. You deserve it. So, going back to the original, we all have choice. You can choose to focus on your strengths and find out what they are. You can choose to also ask a loved one what they are. You may find ones you hadn't thought about. And ask them for evidence. Why do you say that? Or when am I like that? Or where am I like that, etc. And choose to have a good afternoon after a bad morning, or choose to smile, or choose to do something for yourself today that your future self will thank you for. That's always a lovely one as well. Whether it's looking after your health, looking after your well-being, broadening your mind, having a growth mindset, learning something, investing in something, time or energy or whatever. What will your future self thank you for? And if we're constantly each day doing something that our future self will thank us for, then we are progressing. We're growing and expanding and developing. So that's got to be a good thing. So the Auschwitz survivor, is Dr. Chatterjee. You can look that up, and her book is called The Gift. That may well be worth investing in as well. So I hope that you genuinely will sit down and work out what your strengths are, and will use the mantra I am, and say good things, positive things. I will, and make yourself some little inspiring little goals that will get you up in the morning, that you will enjoy, that will bring you something in your life. And I can, i.e. your strengths, the strengths that you've got at the moment, the strengths that you need to develop and focus on, or what you need to learn, what gaps you need to close, etc. And that is forward thinking. That's moving forward in your future, and it's not looking back and beating yourself up. This is all about growth and progress in bite-sized, realistic little chunks. Then see the progress, then feel the motivation, and you're on the right road. So enjoy that. I hope that has been helpful. Please do, if you are struggling, and I know that there are people out there struggling, I know it's a tough time. If you are struggling and you need some coaching support, you absolutely know where I am. The best way to find me and contact me is through the website, www.milestone-coaching.co.uk. It is not expensive. I keep my prices down to equivalent of a haircut, because I think we all will be prepared to treat ourselves to a haircut. So this is much more life-changing, much more, and also hairdressers are closed at the moment. So you may well just need or want just one coaching session over Zoom or the phone or WhatsApp, and that may get you back on the straight and narrow and give you that little support that you need during this tough time. I don't tie people into a certain amount of sessions. You are totally in control of how many you want or need. So do feel free to, there's a phone number there, there's an email address to contact me, www.milestone-coaching.co.uk. Other than that, the only thing I have to ask in return for the podcast is to share it with your friends, because it may be, as we've got friends that are struggling with life generally, let alone the pandemic, it may well be exactly what your friend needs at the moment. So perhaps if you wouldn't mind putting a link on your social media, or maybe even cutting and pasting a link and sending it, emailing it to a particular friend that maybe you're concerned about at the moment, and mentioning a particular episode that's really helped you, or you feel would really help them in their circumstances. Now, that will be really kind to them. It will make you feel good, and I'd really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Other than that, I will speak to you next week on the podcast, and in the meantime, have a really, really good, strong, confident week.